Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Anupma Biology classes. In this video, our topic is Origin of Life. This video is from Chapter 7, Part 1 of CBSE Class 12. This is Evolution series which will cover three major topics, that is Origin of Life, Evolution of Life Forms and the Theories of Evolution in details in many videos related to Evolution series. Let's come here in this series where firstly we will discuss about the origin of life, in which our topic is life and its origin. This video deals with the scientific view about these topics. So the question is, what is life? Life is the inherent capacity of the organism to utilize the outside materials for energy, growth and reproduction through chemical reactions in a controlled manner. Philosophers and scientists have long attempted to learn two events about life, in which the first is how, when and where life originated, and the second is the way in which the original simple life gave rise to the different kinds of organisms found in the world today. Now, the primitive earth or prebiotic earth. What is the means of prebiotic? Prebiotic means before life appeared. The essential requirement for the origin of life was the formation of earth and its initial atmosphere. This provided the inorganic raw materials for the origin of life and the conditions in which the raw material could interact to form organic molecules which could further interact to produce life. Now, the question is, what is in our universe? So here you can see the Big Bang theory which will explain about our universe. It is generally believed by the scientists that about 20 billion years ago, the universe consisted of a huge concentrated matter, that is cosmic material or primeval matter. According to the most accepted theory, named Big Bang theory, proposed by Lemaitre in 1931, the universe came into existence some 15 billion years ago by a Big Bang, that is thermonuclear explosion of a dense entity. This big explosion threw out numerous pieces of cosmic material which is known as nebulae, which became organized slowly into groups of stars called galaxies. Here you can see a picture of galaxies. Scientists have estimated that the universe contains approximately 1,00,000,000 galaxies. These galaxies appear to be moving away from one another at great speed. It is estimated that each galaxy has approximately 10,000 million stars. In each galaxy, stars are formed and broken down regularly. Now, our galaxy is called Akash Ganga or the Milky Way, which you can see in this picture. This is the Milky Way. Sun is one of the million of stars of our galaxy. Our dominant star, that is Sun, along with its orbiting planet and their respective natural satellites, the comets and asteroids, constitutes what we call our solar system. So in our solar system, there are 9 planets, namely Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto. All these planets are revolving around the Sun in elliptical orbit. Of the 9 planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune are surrounded by thick atmospheres. Some of the planets have satellites or moons. For example, Earth has 1 moon. However, Mars and Neptune have 2 moons each. Uranus has 5 moons. Saturn has 9 moons and Jupiter has 12 moons. So this is all about our universe. After this, how does solar system form? So here you can see the formation of solar system. At first, in the formation of solar system, our sun and its planets including Earth, came into existence at the same time and from a common source. Evidence suggested that the solar system was formed about 4.5 to 5 billion years ago. It is thought to have arisen from a huge spinning cloud of cosmic dust and gas termed as solar nebula. As this cloud condensed, the rotational momentum threw out a ring of cloud which continued rotating around the central mass. The central mass condensed further and formed the sun. As the sun condensed, it became hotter and brighter by the conversion of gravitational energy into heat. The ring of cloud broke up into eddies. What is eddies? Eddies are the circular motion in air, fog and dust water. Of varying size, the materials of these eddies condensed because of gravitation into the planet that kept revolving round the sun in different elliptical orbits. Recently, scientists have discovered the 10th planet in our solar system. It is believed to be bigger than Pluto and has been presently named Xena. It has a moon nicknamed Gabriela. Earth originally had only two components: solid mass, which is called lithosphere, surrounded by a gaseous envelope termed atmosphere, and the liquid component known as hydrosphere appeared later when the Earth cooled down to below 100 degrees Celsius. So this is the formation of solar system. Now, changes of early Earth. So what are the changes in our early Earth? So here you can see the compositional layers, that is crust, mantle and core in the Earth, and the mechanical layers, that is lithosphere, exosphere, mesosphere, outer core and inner core. So as the Earth formed by condensation of an eddy, its temperature increased due to internal pressure, gravitation and the effect of solar heating. Heat inside the condensing Earth became sufficient to melt the collected materials. The heavy metals such as iron and nickel sank into the central part of the Earth, forming a molten core. The lighter materials such as silicates and carbides of these and other metals rose to the surface where they cooled and solidified, forming the rocks and the surface crust. The part of the Earth between the core and the crust is called mantle. It is a solid and consists of iron, magnesium, silicates. So, for about 200 to 300 million years, there are chaos on the forming Earth. Bombardment by meteorites added materials to it. There are abundant volcanic activity, intense ultraviolet radiation and frequent lightning. About 4,300 million years ago, conditions began to stabilize. The surface of the Earth was rugged as volcanic activity, continuous Earth movement and contraction on cooling folded and fractured the surface. So here you can see the crust, then mantle, then outer core and inner core. So these are the layers into our Earth. Now, parts of formed Earth. So, Earth consists of three parts. Here, bryosphere, mesosphere and lithosphere. Bryosphere is the central part of the Earth, also called core or knife. It is supposedly formed of molten magma containing mainly iron and nickel. Bryosphere is divided into inner core region and outer core region. While the pyrosphere, that is mesosphere, it forms the middle part of the Earth, also called mantle, and it is about 1800 miles in thickness and mainly consists of silica, magnesium and manganese. While the lithosphere is the rigid outermost cell of the planet Earth. Earth's lithosphere include the crust and the uppermost mantle. It is about 20 to 25 miles in thickness and mainly is formed of silica and aluminium. So these are the parts of the Earth, which is bryosphere, pyrosphere or mesosphere and lithosphere. After this, conditions for the origin of life. So there are four basic requirements for the life to arise, in which the first is primitive atmosphere with little or no oxygen. Second is rigid chemicals including water, various inorganic ions and organic molecules. Third is an energy source in which the energy needed for the chemical evolution on the primitive earth mainly came from the following sources, which are that is the solar radiation. Sun gave intense heat and ultraviolet light in addition to visible light. Second is electric discharges. Violent electric storms thundered across the sky of primitive Earth. Next is volcanic eruptions. Frequent volcanic eruptions scattered ash, the molten rock on land. Next is heat. Heat from the absorbed light and radiation by Earth also supplied energy. Next is cosmic rays. The cosmic rays from space also provide energy for the chemical evolution. And the last in the energy sources is radioactive decay, which from space also provided energy for the chemical evolution, and various elements in the rocks of the earth emitted energy. Last is sufficient time. The period of about 1 billion years between the formation of Earth and the appearance of life was obviously enough for the chemical evolution to produce first cell in nature. So these are the conditions for the origin of life. Now the question is how life originated. So there are 6 major theories have been put forward about the origin of life, which is known as biopoiesis. So here the first theory is theory of spatial creation. Next is theory of spontaneous generation. Third is theory of catastrophism. Then cosmozoic or interplanetary theory. Then theory of eternity of life. Then modern or OPARIN HALDANE theory. So these all are the 6 theories about the life origination, in which here the first theory, which is the theory of spatial creation. So what is this statement about this theory? The theory of spatial creation is accepted by most of the world's religions. It stated that life was created by the visage of a divine being or some supernatural power, that is the creator or God, out of nothing at a particular time in the remote past. According to Christian belief, God created the universe, plants, animals and human beings in 6 natural days. Adam and Eve were the first man and woman created by God. According to Hindu mythology, Lord Brahma, the god of creation, created the world with his wish. Manu and Shraddha were the first man and woman respectively. Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikh religions, held that the entire universe, including all species, came into being with a special word of God. Islam holds the same view. So, there are 3 important postulates in the theory of spatial creation. These are all the different kinds of life, like microorganisms, fungi, algae, animals and plants were created at the same time or at the short intervals without any relationship with one another. Second is, they were created in the same form in which they exist at present, having undergone no changes since their creation. And the third is, their bodies and organs have been specially designed to fully meet the needs of the environment in which they have been created. So after this, there are objections to the theory of spatial creation, in which it is purely a religious concept acceptable only on the basis of faith. It is not a scientific fact. Scientific facts are based on natural laws, hence it does not enjoy general acceptance. Now, the evidence for the theory of spatial creation. Scientific truth is tentative for a scientist, whereas theological truth is absolute for a theist. The process of spatial creation occurred only once, therefore it cannot be observed. And the science relies on observation and hence cannot prove or disprove the spatial creation theory. So this all about the theory of spatial creation. Now, after this, the second theory is theory of spontaneous generation. So here, the theory of spontaneous generation was upheld before the end of the 17th century by both scientists and philosophers. It states that life originated repeatedly from non-living materials in a spontaneous manner. Now, the evidence is against the theory of spontaneous generation. So, in this, the first is Redi's experiment, then Spallanzani's experiment, and the last is Pasteur's experiment. So, the first here, you can see, first theory of the spontaneous generation, that is abiogenesis or autogenesis, is Redi's experiment. So, what is Redi's experiment? Redi, an Italian biologist and physician in 1680, disproved the spontaneous generation of large animals. He placed meat or fish in three jars. One jar was left open, one was covered with gauze, and one was covered with paper. The meat or fish decayed in all the jars and flies were attracted to all. The flies entered the open jar and laid eggs which hatched into larvae. No fly larvae appeared in the meat of other two jars. However, on the gauze and paper that covered these jars, flies laid eggs that produces larvae. This shows that animals arise from the eggs and not from non-living matter. So, in this case, observations are flies land on meat that is left uncovered. Later, maggots appear on the meat. Hypothesis is flies produce maggots. So, you can see here the procedure, and after that the conclusion is maggots form only when flies come in contact with meat. A spontaneous generation of maggots did not occur. So, this is all about the Redi's experiment. After this, the second abiogenesis is Spallanzani's experiment. So, what is Spallanzani experiment? Here you can see the Lazarus Spallanzani. He is an Italian scholar, improved upon Needham's experiment. Boiled flask of gravy to kill life, sealed one jar, left other jar open. Open jar had living microorganism, sealed jar did not. Concluded that gravy did not produce life. Organism entered through the air. So, in case of Spallanzani experiment, which is an Italian priest and scientist in 1765, disproved the spontaneous generation of microorganisms. He showed that the animal and vegetable broth boiled for several hours and immediately sealed were never infested with microorganisms. From this, he concluded that the high temperature had killed all type of living organisms in the broth, and without them, life could not appear. The broth left exposed to air were soon invaded by microorganisms. So this is Spallanzani experiment. After this, the third abiogenesis is Pasteur's experiment. So, what is in Pasteur's experiment? In 1864, Louis Pasteur, a French chemist and bacteriologist, showed that even the minute microorganisms such as protists and bacteria arise from the pre-existing organism of their kind. He took hay infusion in a flask and bent its neck into a S-shaped curve. He then boiled the infusion for several minutes. This killed the microorganism and made the infusion sterilized. On cooling, the escaping steam condensed into water in the lower part of S tube. This water acted as a filter and trapped dust and microorganisms of the air entering the flask. No life appeared in the flask for many months, but in the water trapped in the S tube, many types of microorganisms developed. It has been proved beyond any doubt with the invention of the microscope that the microorganisms, like a higher form of life, also arise from the pre-existing microorganism. The fact that new life comes only from the pre-existing life is the concept of biogenesis or reproduction. It was given by Pasteur in 1862. Even viruses came from the previously existing viruses. So this is all about the Pasteur's experiment. After this, the third theory of abiogenesis is theory of catastrophism. So, the theory of catastrophism is merely a modification of the theory of spatial creation. It has been formulated to explain the differences between the past and the present forms of life. It states that there have been several creations, each preceded by a catastrophe, that is, disastrous end due to some geological disturbance. Each catastrophe completely destroyed the life, and each creation consisted of life quite different from that of the previous one. George Cuvier and Orbigany were the chief advocates of this theory. After this, the fourth theory of abiogenesis is COSMOZOIC or interplanetary theory. According to this theory, which was put forward by the Richter and supported by Arrhenius and others, it stated that life had reached the earth from some other heavenly body in the form of resistant spores of simple organisms in meteorites or in a spaceship. Finding of here fertile soil, they grew and then evolved into the various existing forms. The theory is also called theory of panspermia or spore theory. Now, what are the evidences against spore theory? As far as we know for sure today, life does not exist on any planet except the Earth. Moreover, living matter cannot survive the extreme cold and dryness and intense irradiation of interplanetary space required to be crossed for reaching the Earth. Further, this theory does not explain how life originated, nor from where the spores came into the earth. It shifts the question of how life originated to a distant area beyond our reach to study. Now, the evidences for spore theory. Evidences for the existence of life on other planets came from the discovery of the fossils of microorganisms, somewhat like algae in meteorites in 1961. However, there is no proof that living organisms or spores could survive journey through space and then flourish upon arrival. Moreover, the discovery does not give any clue to the origin of life. So, space research has shown that the bacteria can survive the rigors of space travels and the airless, waterless environment of the moon. This finding, no doubt, removes one of the hurdles in the theory, but it throws no light on the origin of life. So this is all about the cosmozoic or interplanetary theory. After this, the fifth theory is of the abiogenesis is theory of eternity of life. So, according to theory of eternity of life, the theory of eternity states that the organisms have been unalterable not only throughout their existence and will continue to exist in the same unchanging state till eternity. According to Haldan, we found no vestige of a beginning and no prospects of an end. This theory was supported by Richter, Preyer, Helmholtz, Arrhenius, Hoyle, Bondi, etc. So, the theory of eternity of life, also known as steady state theory, which states that life has ever been in existence as at present and will continue to be so for ever, changing only in form. It neither had a beginning nor will have an end. The advocates of this theory also hold that the earth too had no origin and has always existed. They draw this conclusion from the fact that the estimates of the age of the earth are increasing with improved dating techniques. So, now the evidences against the theory of eternity of life. It was generally accepted even long ago that earth had not always existed. If life is eternal, where did it exist before this planet was formed? This question might have given rise to the interplanetary theory. So this is the all about the eternity of life. After this, the last theory of abiogenesis is modern or OPARIN Haldan theory. So what is modern or apparent Haldane theory? According to this theory, here you can see the Haldane soup, which forms the small molecules, then the complex molecule, after that aggregates, the formation of protocells, then protocells plus nucleic acid, which are self-replicating system, then which forms the cell. This is the OPARIN Haldane theory. The modern theory is also called chemical theory or naturalistic theory or primary abiogenesis. So, OPARIN and Haldane held that here the spontaneous generation of life under the present environmental conditions is not possible. Earth's surface and atmosphere during the first billion years of its existence were radically different from today's condition. Earth's initial atmosphere was a reducing one. Here you can see, according to this theory, life evolved in the oceans during a period when the atmosphere was reducing. No free oxygen while containing H2, H2O, NH3, CH4 and CO2. So forces such as the lightning and electric discharges such as sun, wind, UV light and meteorites created organic molecules in the atmosphere which rained into the ocean. The first life arose from a collection of chemicals through a progressive series of chemical reactions in which atoms combined into inorganic molecules into simple organic compounds, and the simple organic monomers into complex organic compounds, that is polymers into aggregates, which finally got organized into the living matter. This abiogenesis occurred about 4 billion years ago. Solar radiation, heat radiated by Earth and the lightning provided energy for the evolution of molecules. The OPARIN-Haldane theory was not immediately accepted as it lacked supporting evidences. However, it was experimentally supported by the Stanley Millers in 1953. So this is all about the abiogenesis. Here, the formation of large molecules from the smaller ones which combine to form the aggregates combine to form the cell, and after the formation of the first living cell, life is started. So this is all about the abiogenesis. Now, steps in the origin of life. So according to the chemical theory, which is naturalistic theory, origin of life proposed by A.I. OPARIN and J.B.S. Haldane, a long evolution of chemical substances preceded the actual origin of life. So there are various steps involved in this process which are described below, in which the first is chemical evolution. Evolution of chemicals is thought to have involved 4 major events, in which the first event is formation of inorganic molecules. So here you can see, in case of the chemical evolution, that means formation of inorganic molecule, high temperature of earth prevented the atoms to form molecules as heat disrupts the bond that holds atoms together. As the earth cooled, free atoms of the different element came together at random and formed inorganic molecules. Since the lighter elements like the hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen and carbon were the first most abundant in the primitive atmosphere, their atoms reacted to form the first molecules. The earliest molecules en route to life might have been the gases, namely hydrogen, nitrogen, ammonia, methane, carbon dioxide and water vapor. The energy for the formation of molecule may have come from sunlight, lightning or volcanic eruption. So, in the possible steps in the origin of life, at first the inorganic molecules combine to form small monomers, then small monomers combine to form larger polymers, then large polymers combine to form protocells in an RNA world, then it forms the DNA based cell. This is the possible steps in the origin of life. So, after this, in the steps in the origin of life, here you can see there are following events which occur in the origin of life. At first, before the first cell, chemical evolution occurs, which production of significant molecules necessary for life. Then phosphoric acid can bond molecules and promote long chain molecule formation. Then amino acids formed first since they do not form if oxygen present. Probably formed on clay surface since they are attractive and absorptive, also protection from the UV rays. Then formation of large molecules, amino acids are linked together by the dehydration synthesis, it means water loss. Clays have potential to absorb water, thus amino acid could be linked on clay surface. So this is the small steps in the origin of life. After this, the second step in the chemical evolution is a spontaneous formation of simple organic molecules or monomers. So, the primitive inorganic molecules later interacted with one another to form simple organic molecules, namely sugar, fatty acids, glycerol, amino acids, and organic bases, that is purines and pyrimidines. This chemical synthesis occurred under conditions not since repeated. Energy for the creation of the first organic compounds was probably provided by solar radiation such as ultraviolet light and electric discharges such as lightning. The reactions which produced simple organic molecules occurred partly in the primitive atmosphere but mainly in the ocean. The inorganic precursors were brought down by the rain when atmospheric water condensed on further cooling of Earth. The rainwater dissolved out such precursors from the rocks also. The inorganic molecules and the organic products of their interactions got dissolved and mixed in the seawater. So this is the spontaneous formation of simple organic molecules. After this, here you can see the steps of chemical evolution. At first, the free atom, that is hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen and oxygen, etc. Formation of molecules and simple inorganic compound, that is H2, NH3, H2, etc. After that, the formation of early organic compound, that is CH4, HCN, etc. Then the formation of simple organic compound, that is sugar, fatty acid, purines, pyrimidines, amino acid, glycerols, etc. Then formation of complex organic compound, that is polysaccharide, proteins, fat, nucleotides, nucleic acid, etc. So these are the steps of the chemical evolution. After this, here accumulation of organic molecules. Two factors helped organic molecules to persist and accumulate, in which the first one is lack of life. If life then existed, these compounds would have been quickly consumed and altered by microorganisms. But since the earth was still sterile, they continued to react with each other and with the seawater. Second is reducing atmosphere. The reducing atmosphere of the earth also played a role in preserving these compounds. Free oxygen, if present, would have destroyed them by oxidation. Now, the possibility for the formation of chemical compounds. All organic reactions taking place in living organisms are speeded up by enzymes. But all these reactions can occur in the absence of enzymes, though far more slowly. Thus, nature, with enough time at its disposal, could synthesize every compound known to exist in living objects under the conditions which is outlined above. Now, after this, you can see here the Miller's experiment. This is very important. So, that here you can see that simple organic compounds could be formed in nature in the manner explained above was experimentally demonstrated in 1953 by Stanley Miller, a biochemist and a graduate student of Harold C. Urey as astronomer. The experiment of Miller is also referred as Miller's and Urey experiment by many authors. Miller designed a glass apparatus comprising a glass flask, a condenser and a liquid flask interconnected with tubes and fitted with source of energy as shown in the figure. So, this is in 1953, Stanley Miller and Harold Urey tested the OPARIN-HALDANE hypothesis using the conditions of prebiotic Earth. So, the apparatus stimulated the conditions on the primitive Earth, including a reducing atmosphere and an ocean. He circulated in this apparatus a mixture of methane, ammonia and hydrogen in the ratio of 2:2:1 and water vapor at 800 degrees centigrade. These gases were believed to prevail in the ancient atmosphere. He provided energy for the interaction of the gases present in the mixture in the form of electric spark of 75,000 volts from electrodes in the gas flask. The electric spark stimulated lightning. Then the gases were condensed in a narrow tube and passing through a liquid flask. Here, energy was provided as a heat with an electric heater. The latter stimulated volcano. Thus, they recreated in their apparatus the probable conditions of the primitive earth. He kept the experiment working continuously for 18 days. A mixture of small organic molecules was formed in the gas flask and was carried by condensation to the liquid flask. He then analyzed the chemical composition of the product of the chemical reactions in the mixture by chromatographic and calorimetric methods. He found many simple organic compounds which included amino acids such as glycine, alanine and aspartic acid, adenine and simple sugars such as ribose. So here you can see the experiment of Miller to show the synthesis of organic compounds from inorganic molecules by stimulating conditions of the primitive earth. Miller was a graduate student of Urey, a US Nobel Prize winner chemist born in 1893. So, according to naturalistic theory versus abiogenesis, the essential difference between the OPARIN-Haldane theory and the theory of spontaneous generation is that the steps leading up to the origin of life took millions of years in the former and just a few hours or days in the latter. Now, after this, the third step in the spontaneous formation of organic compounds is here, that is the spontaneous formation of complex organic compound, that is formations of polymers. So, at first, the small simple organic molecules came together and combined to form large complex biological molecules, that is simple sugar unites combines to form large sugar or starch molecules. Amino acids units join to form polypeptides and proteins, fatty acids and glycerol unites to form fats. Nitrogenous bases sugar and phosphate combined into nucleotides which polymerized into nucleic acid. Heat of the sun probably provided energy for the formation of complex organic compounds. So here you can see the examples of the polymers, that is protein, which is a monomer. Here amino acids are the monomers of the protein. Next is polymer, which is polyester, and the monomer is alcohol and carboxylic acid. Next is plastic polymer, and here the alkene is monomer. Then polymer is starch and the monomers are sugars. And if the polymer is DNA, then the monomers are 4 different nucleotides. So these are the examples of polymers. Here you can see the sludge. What is sludge? Many scientists now hold that the organic molecules formed a sludge, which is a muddy sediment or deposit, instead of a soup. The organic molecules were attracted to the complex charged surface of the clay or other minerals in underwater rocks. The clay and other minerals not only held the organic molecules together but also provided a catalytic surface for the chemical reactions and the selection of certain chemicals in preferences to others. This was the first selection for the biologically suitable molecules. Indeed, the chemical industry today uses mineral catalysts to produce many organic compounds. Many enzymes also use mineral ions as cofactors. It may be added that the organic molecules could not accumulate in the oceans, where they were subjected to break down as fast as formed on thermodynamic ground. So these are all about the spontaneous formation of complex organic compound, that is polymers. After this, in this, a Fox experiment. So what is the Fox experiment? Here you can see that is Fox proteinoids. Sidney Fox, who was influenced by Miller's scenario, formed the above molecules which he called proteinoids. by joining amino acids together. However, these chains of non-functioning amino acids had no resemblance to the real protein that make up the bodies of living things. Actually, all these efforts showed not only that the life did not come about by chance, but also that it could not be reproduced in laboratory conditions. So, experimental evidences has come forth for the synthesis of complex organic compounds from the simple ones. S.W. Fox has synthesized polypeptides by heating a mixture of amino acids to 130 to 180 degrees centigrade for several hours and then cooling them in water. He called these molecules proteinoids or microsphere. Microspheres were 1 to 2 micrometer in diameter. They could be induced to constrict in a way somewhat looking like budding in bacteria. Inorganic phosphates and hydrogen cyanide react to form nucleotides and ATP. This shows that ATP served as an important source of energy for the biochemical reaction very early in the history of life. Fox and his co-workers produced nucleic acids by heating mixtures of nucleosides and phosphates to about 68 degrees centigrade for some time. So this is the key scientist in the origin of life and how the microsphere formed in the Fox experiment. Now, after this, the first step is here the spontaneous formation of molecular aggregates. So, in this, OPARIN and Sidney Fox held that large organic molecules synthesized abiotically on the primitive earth later came together spontaneously and due to intermolecular attraction formed largely colloidal aggregates which is known as coacervates, which you can see in this picture. These are the coacervate picture. Because of deuteronic nature of protein molecules, an envelope of water molecules formed around each aggregate. The membrane protected the enclosed molecules and kept them close to increase chances of the chemical reactions. Breakdown and building up reactions started, the former providing energy for the latter. So here you can see that the protein and polysaccharides combined at specific pH form coacervates which form the coacervates aggregation. The colloidal aggregates selectively absorbed protein and other material from the ocean. The incoming molecules reacted with the contained colloids. Such incorporation could result in growth of the coacervates as well as in increased internal complexity. Certain aggregates, due to some favorable internal organization, absorbed materials more easily and enlarged more quickly than the others and become dominant. Thus, the natural selection operated even during chemical evolution and the origin of life. On increasing in size, the coacervates divided into small ones. The coacervates which grew more rapidly also multiplied more quickly and received the lion's share of the available organic materials from the environment. Rapid growth required efficient reactions with the absorbed compounds for increasing the colloidal materials to the dividing level. So these are all about the spontaneous formation of the molecular aggregates. Now, the second main topic after biogenesis is abiogenesis. So what is abiogenesis? Here you can see that here the monomers diffuse into a fatty acid vesicle, then the monomers spontaneously polymerize and copy any template. Then the heat separates strands, increasing membrane permeability to monomers. Then the polymer backbones attract ions, increasing osmotic pressure. Then the pressure on the membrane drives its growth at the expense of nearby vesicles containing less polymers. Then the vesicles grow into tubular structures. Mechanical forces cause vesicles to divide. Then daughter vesicles inherit polymers from the parent vesicles. So the polymer sequences that replicate faster will dominate the population. So this is here beginning of evolution. The actual origin of life from the non-living chemical compound is thought to have involved two main stages. First one is from coeservates to the first primitive living system called protocells or eobionts or protobionts, and the second is from eobionts to the first living cell. So in this process, now the first, that is formation of eobionts. The coeservates, as stated earlier, carried on it them both building up and breakdown process simultaneously. In other words, they were in a state of dynamic equilibrium, as are the living cells. They required for their existence a constant intake of new material to replace the continuous outflow of degraded materials. Thus, the coeservates had all the basic properties of living cells, such as metabolism, growth, and electron transport chain, and precise control of nucleic acid. Later, the nucleic acid took control of the coeservates and the mechanism of duplication became precise in due course of time. Thus, the genetic material came into existence. With this, the coeservates turned into the first primitive living system called eobionts. The first non-cellular forms of the life could have originated about 3 billion years back. The non-cellular forms would have been giant molecules. Perhaps these capsules reproduced their molecules too. It has now been found that ribosomal RNA has catalytic property also. Thus, RNA could catalyze chemical reactions before the enzymes were evolved. RNA could catalyze its own replication too. It is held that the coeservates, due to lack of a lipid membrane, are not suitable candidate to serve as the precursors of the eobionts, mixture of artificially synthesized organic compounds from microsphere. If the mixtures contain lipids, the microsphere acquire a lipid bilayer around them. Such microsphere may be better suitable to act as the precursors of the eobionts. After this, the second is formation of first cell. Once protein molecules have been formed, some proteins by chance achieved the ability to catalyze the chemical reaction, that is, to act as enzymes. Formation of enzymes greatly speeded up the synthesis of various molecules in the eobionts. This might have made some eobionts more successful in processing food and producing energy than others. Continued selection of the more successful eobionts must have made them more perfect with time. So, in case of first cell, at first nucleic acid developed, then the biomembrane formation, or after that the present position, the chemical compounds could be formed in nature even today by lightning discharges or ultraviolet radiations. But any organic compound so formed might undergo spontaneous oxidation or be taken up and degraded by the living organism. Thus, the presence of free oxygen and living organisms on the earth at present are thought to prevent the abiotic origin of life. After this, now the further evolutions of the organism. In this, the first one is heterotrophism. The first living organism developed among the organic molecules and in oxygen-free atmosphere. They presumed obtained energy by the fermentation of organic compounds, and they are almost certainly heterotrophs, which requiring ready-made organic materials as food. Next is autotrophism. As the earth cooled, synthesis of organic molecules ceased. Probably a time came when the supply of performed organic molecules accumulated in the sea broth or sludge in the past was reduced because of their use as food by the early organism. This adversely affected the growth and reproduction of these organisms. Perhaps at that time, some of the heterotrophs, due to their unique structure, evolved further growth, gene mutation, and became capable of making their own organic molecules by chemosynthesis or photosynthesis for nourishment. Thus arose the autotrophs. In autotrophs, there are chemosynthesis. The chemosynthetic organisms are called chemotrophs, prepared organic food by using energy released during certain inorganic chemical reactions. And the next is photosynthesis. The photosynthetic organism termed photoautotrophs develop the pigments chlorophyll by combination of simple chemicals. They then prepared organic food by using the energy of the sunlight captured with the help of chlorophyll. Now, the formation of ozone layer. As oxygen accumulated in the atmosphere, the ultraviolet light changes some of the oxygen into ozone. The ozone formed a layer in the atmosphere, blocking the ultraviolet light and leaving the visible light as the main source of energy. Photosynthesis thus began to change the composition of the atmosphere to that of the present air. Because of changes in the composition of atmosphere, the conditions in which the life can originate are unlikely to return. Photosynthesis released oxygen for use in respiration, which produced carbon dioxide. All the oxygen and carbon dioxide present in the Earth's atmosphere are the products of the living organism and have passed through the living organism over and over again during the course of evolution. So here in the formation of ozone layer, the ozone layer or the ozone forms by the conversion of atmospheric oxygen into ozone, and this process is called Chapman's cycle. The oxygen gets photolyzed by UV rays to form free oxygen radicals. Next is origin of eukaryotic cells. So the first organism perhaps lacked an organized nucleus. Even today, the bacteria and the blue-green algae are without a distinct nucleus. Later, the nuclear material got enclosed by an envelope that separated it from the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm developed specialized organelles. This produced eukaryotic cells in the oceans. Mitochondria and chloroplast are thought to have originated from the prokaryotic cells that happened to live within other cells as symbionts. Another major advance developed by eukaryotes was sexual reproduction. This provided genetic variability besides mutations and enabled them to evolve faster than prokaryotes. And last is origin of multicellular organism. Once the unicellular organisms were formed, the cells could gather to form colonies. Later, cell differentiation led to the multicellular organism. The latter gave rise to all the different forms of life by gradual modification over the ages. This method of the formation of complex forms of life from simpler ones by gradual changes is called organic evolution. So this is the entire scheme for the origin of life is speculative. Now here the summary of origin of life. So the events which led to the origin of life under the influence of physical factor in the primitive earth environment here summarized below. Free atoms in the atmosphere came together as earth cooled and formed inorganic molecules. Then inorganic molecules interacted and produced simple organic monomers, that is sugar, fatty acid, glycerol, amino acid and nitrogenous bases. Now, the simple organic monomers by further interaction gave rise to large complex organic polymers, that is polysaccharides, proteins, lipids, nucleotides and nucleic acids. Then large organic polymers aggregated into coacervates or microspheres, which could absorb and release the materials, grow and divide in an irregular manner. Nucleic acids took control of the activities occurring in the coacervates or microsphere, which became the first primitive living system, that is eobionts. Lipid proteins membrane evolved to separate the eobionts from surrounding environment. Process of growth and division became regular and precise. This gave rise to first living cells, that is progenotes. First living cells were anaerobic and heterotrophs. After this, some primitive heterotrophs evolved into first autotrophs by acquiring ability to form organic food from themselves. Phototrophs created the existing atmosphere by releasing oxygen. Further evolution produced the various aerobic existing organisms. So, here the free atoms combine to form inorganic molecules. Inorganic molecules combine to form simple organic molecules. Simple organic molecules combine to form complex organic molecules. And complex organic molecules combine to form coservates or microspheres, which form the eobionts. And eobionts form the first primitive cell. So, this is all about the summary of origin of life. After this, where life originated. So, life is thought to have originated in the seawater, and this is shown by the following facts. Many simpler and lower animals live in the sea. Inorganic salts of the protoplasm occur as major constituents in the seawater. Earliest animal remains are all found in the rocks of marine origin. Water is essential for the life because of its special properties. So, what are the special properties? First is temperature stabilizer. Water does not allow sudden changes in temperature in and around the organism. Second is reaction medium. Water makes dissolved ions and molecules more chemically reactive by permitting their free movements and intermixing. Next is maintenance of molecular conformations. Macromolecules such as proteins and nucleic acids attain their three-dimensional forms in water to become suitable for biological activity. And the last is structural components. Water is the main component of the cell. So from the seawater, many organisms later invaded freshwater and land. Some freshwater animals such as shark, bony fishes, whales and seals have gone back to the ocean, the original homeland of life. They are said to be secondarily marine creatures. After this, when life originated. So, the earth probably came into existence about 4.5 billion years ago. Fossils of certain prokaryotes cell have been found from the rocks about 3.3 to 3.5 billion years old. Geologists have found about 3.9 billion years old rocks containing carbonates that might have resulted from life process. From this, it is estimated that the life appeared at least about 4.0 billion years back, and there are well-formed atmosphere at that time, but it contained no free oxygen. Alternatives have been suggested about the mode and place of eobionts formation. After this, what is exobiology? Space programs have created a great interest in knowing about the existence of life on Earth, other planet of our solar system or elsewhere in the cosmos. The investigations of life on heavenly bodies other than the Earth is called exobiology. So, the foregoing argument suggests that the origin of life as an orderly, natural process on the earth was possible, rather it was almost inevitable. Of the vast number of planets in all the known galaxies of the universe, many may have conditions suitable for the origin of life and therefore may have even life too. Some of the organisms inhabiting other planets may be similar to those of our planets, and others may be different. They might have a different kind of genetic code or might be made up of different elements. Although all this is merely a speculation, it seems probable that life does exist elsewhere in the universe. So, at present, there is no direct evidence of life on any heavenly body except the Earth. The surface of Mars is a cool, dry, lifeless desert. A meteorite from the Mars found in Antarctica shows structures resembling fossil prokaryotes. Whether there are geological artifacts or evidences of early life is uncertain. Photographs of the ice-covered surface of Europe of the Jupiter's moons have created an idea that there is water beneath the surface and it may support prokaryotes. Moon too have no life due to the lack of water. So this is the end of lecture in which we know about the life, our universe, formation of solar system, changes on early earth, parts of earth, conditions for the origin of life, how life originated, steps in the origin of life, where and when life originated, and exobiology. So the next video will be on evolution. So if you understood this video, please like and share it and subscribe to my channel Nupma Biology Classes. If you have any questions, any queries or any suggestions, you can ask in the comment section below. Thank you for the watching.